and welcome to Sunny with a Chance of Chaos, the podcast that is equal parts optimistic and realistic. Join me as we navigate the ups and downs that everyday life brings. I'm Lindsay, and I'm so glad you're here. So, get a coffee, get comfy, and get ready for a little bit of life's chaos. Hey there, welcome back. As you can no doubt hear or will be able to hear, I am not recording this episode from the air-conditioned comfort of my home recording space. I'm on a dock on a lake in Muskoka on a family summer holiday, and seeing as this episode is all about finding the fun in the chaos of adventures, I thought an authentic sort of semi-wilderness recording of this subject would be appropriate. So here I am. I'm on the lake and the birds are chirping and the water's lapping and it's a beautiful day. So thanks for being here. Before we get into this week's topic, however, I wanted to share with you a message I received from a listener through Instagram. She had just finished listening to episode 9, When Help Is Not Helpful, and these were her reflections. Hey Lindsay, just had a chance to listen to your latest episode. It was fabulous. My eldest daughter just got braces and was in a lot of pain at first. She just wanted to vent about it. She didn't need me to try and fix it. And after a few probably unhelpful comments, I just asked her what I could do to support her. You're absolutely right. Many times people just need us to listen and maybe give them a hug. Your wise words, warmth, and openness will help many people. Keep up the wonderful work. Thank you so much for the kind words, and more importantly, for your reflections. There is nothing that makes me happier than knowing that my reflections on life on this podcast are helpful for others in their own lives. All right, so here we go. I sincerely hope, that you are all enjoying some summer fun, perhaps a road trip or two, maybe an extended vacation, a camping weekend, even just a trip to the beach. Whatever your summer joy or relaxation looks like, the summer tends to bring new adventures, time outdoors, and for some people, travel, and with it, lots of good stories, both joyful and not so joyful. My friend recently got back from a camping trip. This was her first one with her new baby, and as you can imagine, things didn't go perfectly. They got eaten alive by the seasonal bugs that are inevitably up north, and the heat wave they tent camped in was nearly unbearable, and yet, when she got back, she used the term type 2 fun to describe her trip. I've been hearing this term more frequently over the course of the last year or so. My son's music teacher said it to his class. A couple of my friends have started using the term. I've seen it on social media here and there. The concept of it fascinated me. So I decided to do what I love. I decided to find out more about it, figure out where it shows up in my own life, and do a podcast episode about it. Okay, so let me give you an example of type 2 fun to start. Back in June, I had the amazing opportunity to go see Sarah McLachlan live in Toronto at Budweiser Stage. If you've never been there, it's an outdoor venue down kind of on the waterfront. It's a fabulous venue. I definitely recommend it if you're a live music fan. I've been a longtime fan of Sarah, and I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, the album she was touring for its 30-year anniversary. Let's start with the show was mid-work week on a Wednesday evening starting at 7:30 p.m. So for someone like me who's a 10 o'clock bedtimer, this was already going to be a bit of a stretch. So we drive to Toronto. The traffic is wicked. A 2-hour drive to the venue took 4 hours plus the half-hour walk from the parking lot to the gate in a heat wave, 40 degrees with the Humidex in Toronto. So already we're off to a great start. The lines are long. The weather is humid. People are puking. One would think I had a terrible time, but the music was totally worth it. It was so enjoyable. The experience of hearing an old favorite artist brought back beautiful memories of my younger years. The concert experience was saturated with joy, nostalgia, emotion. We were exhausted physically and emotionally by the time we made our way back to the car, but the fun had only just begun. The Type 2 fun. We got caught in a massive storm on the way home. We were forced to detour. We almost ran out of gas on a dark and deserted side road. Like, I'm not kidding. I can't make this stuff up. Another long and wild leg of the journey. I finally fell into bed around 1:30 or 2. I got up and I worked the next day. Again, one might think this was overall a terrible experience. I would be suffering some highway trauma and I'd never again attend a concert in Toronto, especially during the week. But the way I remember the story is with awe and wonder, disbelief, and a lot of humor. I have only positive memories of the experience, even though only about 2 to 3 hours of the 10-hour experience was actually joy-filled. This is weird, right? You're probably thinking of a Type 2 fun story of your own, about a camping adventure gone sideways, a road trip gone sour, a birthday party that went up in proverbial flames. So why do we love to tell these stories? Why do we almost always end up telling them with a smile and a chuckle of nostalgia? Let's find out more about Type 2 fun. In digging deeper into the concept of Type 2 fun, I found not only hilarious stories of people's Type 2 fun experiences, but I also found an article written in 2015 by Kelly Cords about how we can categorize fun into 3 tiers. It goes like this. Type 1 fun is fun that is truly enjoyable while it's happening. Examples could be building a perfect sandcastle at the beach with your kids and they didn't even argue while it was happening. Maybe it's freshly fallen untouched powder on a ski trip, or the amazing Ontario produce you bought from that roadside stand. It was fun while it was happening. It's fun in hindsight. This is also known as simply fun. We can just call it fun. Type 2 fun is miserable while it's happening, but it's fun in retrospect. It usually begins with the best intentions and then things get carried away. For example, the cookies you try to bake for the sale that burn to a crisp and set off the emergency sprinklers, or your kid who's potty training, having to pee so bad on the highway that he has to use the empty McDonald's cup in the back seat of the car because there's no way he's gonna make it. Has anyone else been there? See, so this is what I'm saying. Miserable at the time, hilarious in retrospect. This type of fun is absolutely dependent on time passing, storytelling, and everyone actually being okay in the end, all of which often offer a rosy retrospective. Type 3 fun is not fun at all, not even in retrospect. Afterward, you are left to question every life choice you ever made, lose all faith in your ability to come up with good ideas. I'm being slightly facetious here, but I mean things like renovations that start with replacing the kitchen sink and move quickly into tearing walls down and being without a kitchen for 6 months. Or some people attempting that roller coaster everyone raves about. It'll be fun, they said, as you stumble off the ride afterward, disoriented and nauseous, grateful to have walked away in one piece, and you swear up and down you'll never get in another vehicle that moves faster than a bicycle as long as you live. See, it wasn't fun when it was happening, and it's not joyful to retell the story either. I have so many Type 2 fun stories over the course of my life that I can include here. My kids' personal favorite is the tale of their first ever canoe trip in Algonquin Park. I am certain that 1 or 2 more Type 2 events would have quickly had this trip teetering on the edge of Type 3 fun. There was a fire ban. There was torrential rain requiring us to dig a trench around our tent. Ask me how those 2 things go together, a fire ban and torrential rain. I have no idea, but that was the case. There were mosquitoes the size of sparrows that drove us into our tent at sundown, a beer that exploded in my backpack, squirrels that ate our last fresh produce, and squirrels that ate the handle of our fishing rod. There was a broken toe before a 1.5 kilometer portage, and a camp stove that broke on day 1. And, if you'll recall the fire ban, this meant cold coffee, raw hot dogs for the next 4 days. It was, all told, a disaster, but we laughed and we laughed and we laughed and we laughed. Not always during the trip, but certainly in the weeks following while we retold the story to our friends. One of my friends commented during a retelling, she said, "How are you even smiling right now? That sounds awful." I would have packed up and called it quits. But we didn't. We stuck it out. We lived to tell the tale, as they say, and we love to rehash those stories. This, for me, is the perfect example of type 2 fun. It was miserable during, hilarious and joy-filled afterwards. I think for me, the reason that the idea of type 2 fun resonates so hard with me is because it just absolutely nails the theme of this podcast. It's a healthy balance of optimism and realism. Perhaps for some folks that Algonquin trip would have been 100% type 3 fun, no argument. I also think that your own personal capacity to look on the bright side, if you will, likely plays a role in how you classify the fun. Some people are hardwired for misery. Others are toxically positive. I think the balance of the two is type 2 fun. It's a Goldilocks kind of scenario. Be optimistic and realistic in equilibrium. If I'm being very realistic with you here, my broken toe was actually problematic and not really part of the type 2 fun of that trip. It was extremely painful. It made the portage out quite unbearable and difficult. It wasn't that fun, not even in hindsight. But the handle of the fishing rod bearing millions of tiny teeth marks and my beer-stained clothes, this was hilarity. It seems to be all about finding the balance of turning your face toward the sun once it finally stops raining and the sun comes out, and also perhaps going to get your foot x-rayed upon your arrival home. Another reason why type 2 fun stories are so common at parties, in the office, or while catching up with friends is because secretly everyone loves a disaster story. And when it all works out in the end with no real harm or foul, these stories make for comic storytelling. In the moment, the last apple being whisked away by a cheeky squirrel is the worst. But in hindsight, we can all have a laugh about it. And let's be honest, very few people want to sit through a 2-hour slide deck of your idyllic trip to Spain. They want to see a few pics, they want to know you had a great time, and they want to hear about your pants ripping on the 4-hour train ride with no access to your luggage to change. Or last year, when off this same dock that I'm sitting on, I innocently went fishing for bass and freaked out when I managed to catch a giant snapping turtle. I was so worried I was going to hurt it, but in hindsight, the story's hilarious. So, see, misery in the moment, no real catastrophic harm done. People love a disaster story. Type 2 fun stories are delicious. They put the audience in a position where they can imagine themselves in that chaotic scenario and think, what would I have done? How would I have handled that? Or, more likely, I'm so glad that it wasn't me. The other thought I have is that tales of type 2 fun humanize experiences that are otherwise perhaps difficult for people to relate to. I lived in South Korea for a year in 2006, 2007. For many people who have never visited or read much about it, Korea is imaginatively inaccessible. The images of the life there, the people, the food, the smells, the students I taught would be so far outside of a scope of reference, and reasonably so. It's a beautiful, culturally rich country steeped in tradition and history, but no one really wants to hear about that. So when I returned from Korea, I talked about the adorable and silly kids I taught, the way they sweetly mixed up their English words or had no filter, and it inadvertently offended me day after day. For example, I came to work one particularly hot and humid day. My hair was so frizzy, my braids were falling out. This one little guy in my preschool class came to me. He stared at my hair, frowned, and said in his amazing, newly acquired English, "Lindsay, teacher, at home, you have mirror?" Indicating that I had not given myself a good enough brush up before leaving for work. I was super embarrassed, but also I nearly died laughing. I did not come home and tell stories about the perfectly behaved students who sat in rows and faithfully completed their homework day in and day out, because that was a lot of my experience in Korea. But those are boring stories. So I tell the mirror story time and time again. When I was in Korea, I was afforded the opportunity to do a lot of traveling around the country. Easy enough and cheap enough to get around, so we road tripped almost every weekend. We saw all corners of Korea. But again, only a handful of friends and family really want to hear about the perfectly timed trains, the orderly fashion in which people move about the world, or the beautiful sunset on the beach, like all of that. However, while traveling around Korea, I encountered a good many Type 2 fun stories, and those are the ones I retold time and time again. Like this one, for example. We were on our way to a place called Chuncheon. This is a town very well known for an amazing spicy chicken dish that we fell in love with. We wanted to taste it in the city that made it famous. So we traveled to the bus station. We asked for tickets to Chuncheon, or at least like we thought we did. What we actually asked for was tickets to Chungcheong, a very well-known province of Korea in the opposite direction from the chicken dish city. So they sold us the tickets. We hop on the bus. Our mouths are watering. We're thinking about this feed we're going to have that night. About 30 minutes into the 2-hour trip, the bus driver made an announcement over the PA system on the bus in Korean. He had been looking back at us, seemingly puzzled for the entirety of the 30 minutes. After he made this announcement, there was like this hum throughout the bus, which was filled with Korean-born folks. We were the only foreigners on the bus, so this is followed by peals of laughter. We had no idea what was going on. All of a sudden, the bus driver pulls the bus over to the side of the highway, comes back to look at our tickets. He asks, Chuncheon? And we nod. And he says, Chungcheong, and we nod again, and he laughs. And we start to realize that tourists don't usually head to the province. They're typically headed for the famous chicken dish town. This is clearly something he had dealt with before. Silly Waeguk, which is the Korean word for white people. No wonder the whole bus was snickering. Anyway, moments later, another bus pulls up beside us, and we're shuffled wordlessly off the original bus onto a new bus that will apparently take us away to our beloved chicken dish town of Chuncheon. To this day, my English-speaking filter can barely hear the difference between those two words. But honestly, I die laughing every time I recount that story. At the time, it was humiliating. We're now way behind schedule. We're so embarrassed. We've put these people out and on the edge of miserable. But a couple hours later, thanks to the passing of time and that rosy lens it gives us, we were happily eating our spicy chicken and laughing hysterically about being silly Waeguk. So this, for me, is another story that's just the epitome of Type 2 fun. Miserable in the moment, hilarious afterwards. And this is a story that people can relate to. Everyone has made errors while traveling or navigating a new territory, a new job, maybe a first date. Most people can imagine what it would feel like to be in that situation. Type 2 fun not only serves to humanize a storyteller, but it also has the potential to connect the listener to the content. Lastly, one more thing I've noticed over time as I continue to organically gather more and more Type 1, 2, and 3 fun experiences in my life, adversity actually serves to bring people together with this quality and depth that positive experiences do not. Don't get me wrong, a fun and pleasant day at the beach eating fries with your kids will be a lasting memory for all of you, but the day at the beach where the seagull marches right onto your blanket and proceeds to eat all the fries right out of your cardboard container, that's a memory that will stick and will allow a different kind of bonding to happen between the people who experienced it. My trip to Toronto to see Sarah McLachlan, the person I took to the concert with me and drove there and back with wasn't even that interested in seeing the show. They were like, who's this Sarah McLachlan person? Do I know any of their songs? Which in hindsight was hilarious. But the experiences of the journey there and back brought us so much closer. It connected us in a way that we had not been connected prior. Going through something difficult or challenging with someone and coming out the other side relatively unscathed almost always results in a strengthening of the connection, the friendship, the bond, or the love. So the next time you find yourself in a miserable situation, on the wrong bus, drinking cold camping coffee, or in the middle of a 5-hour canoe paddle in a rainstorm, try to turn your face towards the sun and think, what type of fun is this? It may help you navigate the adversity more smoothly, knowing that you're going to get a good dinner party story out of it. Okay, now here's your homework. I'm giving you homework. I know it's the summer, but you're getting homework. Part 1, find me on Instagram at Sunny with a chance of chaos _. Part 2, send me a direct message, a video, an audio recording, a written recount of your own Type 2 fun stories. I would love to do a follow-up episode to this one featuring my listeners' miserable, beautiful, and memorable Type 2 fun stories. Okay, welcome back to the Stacks. I want you to have a read of the short article called The Fun Scale by Kelly Cordes. She's a writer and a rock climber, and the article's great. The podcast I found, there's a podcast put out in the world by Embark Exploration Co., and it's literally called Type 2 Fun, all one word. It's mostly adventure and trekking stories. It focuses on the hardships of adventuring that turn into the fun parts when it's all said and done. Lastly, I found a blog on outwardbound.org called What is Type 2 Fun and Why is it Good for You? I love this one. In this blog, the author Eva claims that Type 2 Fun is the type that leaves you with lessons and memories to last a lifetime, and I couldn't agree more. This week, I am grateful in our gratitude moment for the beautiful landscape I'm currently looking at up in the Muskokas. I wish I could take a picture right now. I feel so lucky to have access to this stunning, peaceful part of Ontario. I'm certain there will no doubt be some Type 2 fun stories that come out of this trip with my family. There seem to always be Type 2 fun stories. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to turn your face toward the sun, and also don't forget to do your homework. I want to hear all your Type 2 fun stories. Please don't forget to send me a message on Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye.